Oh, we're back on the record. All jurors are present. All counsel and the defendant are present. All right, Ms. Barr, would you like to take this witness on voir dire?
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you.
All right, go ahead.
Good afternoon, Ms. Rozsa.
Hey, good afternoon.
You testified before lunch that you use the Strava app.
Correct.
Application. Are you employed by Strava?
No.
Have you ever been employed by Strava?
No, ma'am.
Have you ever had any kind of professional association with Strava?
No.
What kind of server systems are the Strava records maintained on?
I do not know.
Do you know where they keep their physical servers?
No, ma'am.
Do you know if they use a cell tower system or a satellite tracking system to keep their records?
It's my understanding that it's GPS based via satellite.
And how do you know that?
Just when you sign up for it and it gives information about what Strava is, it talks about it and gives an overview.
So you learned that as a user
Right.
when you got the emails?
Well,
To sign
just
up.
signing up, yes.
How does the Strava app generate route reports?
So basically when you hit that record button or your start button, your transmitter or your receiver, I guess your Garmin device or your phone would be that receiver, and it's going to get the GPS data hit to it. So once you're finished, it would compile those points along the way to generate the map. That's my understanding of how the mapping system would work.
And you've learned that as a user of the app?
Right, just by knowing the routes that I've taken and seeing the map and it correlating.
What sources of information are used to generate the route reports?
Can you be more specific, or?
I would like to know if you know how the route reports are generated.
I don't know.
I'm going to object to vague phrase.
Overruled, you can answer. Do you understand the question?
Yes, but just from basic GPS data that gets stored into one of the application text files. I've seen that on my phone whenever I've had backups done, but I don't know how they actually store it in their format. I couldn't tell you.
Do you know how Strava maintains the reports?
No.
Do you know how the route reports are verified by Strava?
I don't know.
Meaning that if, for example, if a user, say you, were to call Strava and say, my app is showing that I ran or swam or cycled 5 miles, but I know that I ran or swam or cycled 20 miles that day.
Mm-hmm.
How does Strava verify which of those things is true?
Through GPS, because I've had activities where the GPS data was off a little, or the GPS actually lost signal, and when that occurred on the map, it would just show a straight line from where it lost signal to where it gained it again.
Do you know how the Strava app authenticates a user's profile information?
I don't know their authentication process.
For example, how Strava can confirm if the name on the profile matches a real person. Do you know how they authenticate that?
It would be user input. So, I mean, I could put whatever name I wanted to on mine. Most people put their true names, but there are others that don't and use pseudonyms or use a different photo and not necessarily a photo of themselves on their profile.
You're assuming that from your experience as a user.
Right, it's strictly as a user.
But you haven't looked at the entire Strava user universe of people who are using the app and compared that to real people.
No, I haven't.
Your Honor, at this point, I don't think that that she can authenticate these records. She only has information.
All right, okay, well, okay, the objection is noted. Just let me ask you, you said that you can tell when it malfunctions, in other words, it loses signal because it has one point where it ends, another point where it picks up, and it's just a straight line?
Yes.
And doesn't, for example, doesn't follow the natural curvature of a road you might be riding?
Correct.
Okay. All right, other than that, is it have you gone on rides or runs and then looked at your Strava and said, yes, that's exactly where I went?
Yes.
So you verify the accuracy of
At
it?
least 99% of the time I've used it over 6.5, 7 years.
Okay, and that's by looking at the map that it generates?
Correct.
Okay, all right. Let's see, council, sidebar on the record, please. And again, when we go out of the courtroom, if you want to stand up, I know you just sat down, but if you want to take a stretch break and talk, you're more than welcome to do so. Are you all set?
I am.
But just let me know when you're ready.
I'm ready.
You ready?
Yes.
Okay, all right. We're back on the record. We're now meeting in the presence of the jury. All right, Mr. Owens, you can continue your direct examination.
Thank you very much, Your Honor. Ms. Rosa, we discussed earlier in your direct examination that you had located a number of emails and internet artifacts that reflected a user profile in the name of Kellen Winslow Jr. for the Strava application. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
And those were sent to the K2 Gmail email addresses that were contained on the laptop seized in Mr. Winslow's residence. Is that correct?
The emails were from the iMac. The laptops aren't in play for this.
Yes, the iMac laptop, right?
It's a all-in-one, so it's more of a tower-type computer.
I'm sorry, I'm referring to it as an laptop. I apologize. The computer.
Yes.
And in terms of that computer, was that identified as K2 when you were discussing the computer name?
Right, K2 is iMac.
Now, showing you what's been marked as Court's Exhibit 99 for identification, looking at this exhibit, does that appear to be a user ride record of from the Strava application?
Yes, sir, it does.
If I may approach, Your Honor?
Yes, this is 99, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
I'm going to show you a series of images, and I have them here. What would be the date and time associated with this particular ride from the Strava application?
The date is Thursday, May 24th, 2018 at 3:26 p.m.
And is there a notation for the user associated with this account?
It says Kellen Winslow Jr.
And is there a label for this particular ride on May 24th that originated at 3:26 p.m.?
It's titled Afternoon Ride, which is basically the default setting if you ride after a certain point of day.
And is there a user photograph associated with the account?
Yes, sir.
And does that depict an individual wearing cycling clothing?
Yes, it does.
And was there actually a GPS route that's reflected on Court's Exhibit 99?
Yes.
And did that route originate in the city of Encinitas and then drive, and then lead northeastern direction up into the hills of Santa Lija?
Yes. The green dot would be the origination, and then the checkered flag is where it ends.
And then moving forward from Court's Exhibit 99, looking at Court's Exhibit 86 for identification, does this show a origin of the route depicted in a close-up view of the GPS coordinates?
It is a close-up of the route. If it was taken from that one, then my answer would be yes.
Okay. And does that actually show the Cardiff Sports Park that would be located along Lake Drive?
Correct.
And would this include the intersection between Lake Drive and Birmingham Drive?
Yes, sir.
And looking at that GPS data, is that consistent with your experience and your use of the Strava app in terms of the origin and the way in which it would be tracked for various locations?
Yes, sir.
Now, turning to Court's Exhibit 87 for identification, is there another afternoon ride associated with the same Strava user account with the name Kellen Winslow Jr. and the photograph we just discussed?
Yes, sir.
And does that show that there was an afternoon ride on the day prior to May 24th?
Correct, it does.
What was the date that's associated with this printout?
It's Wednesday, May 23rd, 2018 at 4:15 p.m.
And does that show that there's a origin on the GPS coordinates that's contained here?
Yes.
And was that also in the city of Encinitas?
Yes.
And then was there a ride down the coast highway into Solana Beach and down towards Del Mar?
Yes, correct.
Showing you now Courts Exhibit 88. Does that show a close-up view of Lake Drive as it extends down to Birmingham Drive for this ride?
Yes, sir, it does.
And does it show the GPS track actually stops or continues and makes a loop into what would be the residence area of the homes that are near that corner of Lake Drive and Birmingham Drive?
Yes, sir.
Showing you now Courts Exhibit 89 for identification. Do you have that in front of you?
Yes.
Does that show the same user profile by the name of Kellen Winslow Jr. and the photo that we've identified?
Yes, sir.
And does that show an afternoon ride labeled for a particular date?
Yes, it does.
What's the date associated with this afternoon ride?
This one is Thursday, May 10th, 2018 at 2:45 p.m.
Now, with this particular printout, does that show also that there are GPS coordinates that are associated with the ride on May 10th of 2018?
Yes.
And did that also originate in the Lake Drive area of Encinitas? Or the city of Encinitas?
Yes.
And did it extend down on El Camino Real to Manchester Road?
Correct, yes.
Showing you Courts Exhibit 90 for identification, does this show that on May 10th, the route taken by, that was automatically recorded by the GPS data, does that show that it extends southbound on Manchester Road near the 5 freeway?
Yes, sir, it does.
And does it show that the route taken went along Manchester Road and near the San Elijo Lagoon in a loop to the west of the 5 freeway?
Yes, sir, it does.
And it then continues on and extends through the Cardiff area of Encinitas and southbound on Coast Highway, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, nothing further, Your Honor.
All right, Cross?
Just a couple questions. A Strava app user doesn't log into the app using a fingerprint, do they?
No, it's an email address and password.
There's no iris scan or anything like that.
Correct. No.
So it's possible that a person could use a registered user's Apple Watch or their Garmin, record a ride or a run, and that would be uploaded to the registered user's profile.
Sure, if that was the account that was logged in.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, any redirect?
No, thank you.
All right, can this witness be excused?
She may.
Yes.
All right,
Okay.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'll take those exhibits.
Thank
All right,
you, sir.
Mr. Owen, next witness.
Your Honor, may we briefly approach? I want to make a disclosure to the court on, I would assume, on the record.
Okay, we'll approach on the record. That's it?
Yes.
All right, let's go back on the record. We're now meeting in the presence of the jury. All right, you can call your next witness.
Thank you. The people call Hailey McKinney.
If you would come forward and raise your right hand. You do solemnly state that the testimony you are about to give in the matter now pending before this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
If you would, please have a seat at the witness stand. you would, please state your name and spell your first and last name for the record.
Hailey McKinney, Hailey McKinney.
Thank you.
All right, good afternoon, Ms. McKinney. All right, direct examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Ms. McKinney.
Good afternoon.
Can you tell the jury what you do for a living?
I am a crime and intelligence analyst with the San Diego County Sheriff's Department, currently assigned to the Major Crimes Division.
Can you tell us what your duties are as a crime and intelligence analyst with the Major Crimes Division?
In this particular assignment, we are responsible for case support to the case agents and the detectives in our units, meaning that we will help identify a suspect in cases where a suspect's not known, if we have clues that may help lead them to one. And we also help to identify evidence or pieces of information that may support or corroborate statements in cases.
Now, when you are actually in case support, are you working with the investigators, the detectives that are assigned to the Major Crimes Division?
Yes, always.
And can you just tell us a little bit about your training and experience that qualifies you to be an analyst with the Sheriff's Department?
I've been with the department for 10 years. I started out as a dispatcher before transferring over to the crime analysis unit. I have a bachelor's degree from San Diego State University in criminal justice, and I've taken numerous classes on the various topics and skills we have.
And in terms of some of the types of information that you're able to generate as an analyst, what do you typically do on a day-to-day basis when you're working in case support?
The duties themselves can vary. Whatever might come up in a case, we tend to wear several hats. Most consistently, I monitor social media sites and open source intelligence, anything that we can garner that's been put out on the internet. I look at several forms of electronics. I look at laptops, tablets, cell phones, digital cameras, USB devices, hard drives, anything that might be taken in an investigation. We also look at data that may have been pulled, anything that might be GPS based, whether that be like cell phone tower data or cell phone records or anything of that sort. So it really can vary. We do a lot of pattern analysis and those sorts of things as well.
Now, in terms of your assistance with the investigation into the reported sexual assaults in March of 2018 and May of 2018, did you work with Detective John Johnson seated in court here?
Yes, I did.
And did you, in terms of some of the case support that you engaged in, did you assist him with locating, like you said, open source information regarding the suspect in the case?
Yes.
Now, we've shown a series of exhibits. I'd like to just take a moment, if I can, showing you Court's Exhibit 99 for identification. If you recognize that as being the Strava user report for a ride that occurred on May 24th of 2018.
I have an exhibit. You can take
pardon.
I have a hard copy here.
Thank
If you
you.
want to take a look. There's other exhibits underneath it as well. But that is 99.
Okay. Yes, that is the ride on May 24th, 2018.
And looking at Court's Exhibit 86, the next exhibit, does that show an origin of that ride that would be on Lake Drive near its intersection with Birmingham Drive?
Yes.
And based upon your knowledge of the case and the information that you had in coordination with Detective Johnson, would that be close to the residence associated with the person we're referring to as Jane Doe 3?
Yes.
And then moving forward to Court's Exhibit 87 for identification, and does that show the information reflecting a May 23rd, the day prior to the reported indecent exposure incident for that same profile?
Yes, it does.
And looking at Court's Exhibit 88, previously identified, does that show GPS location information that extends into the front yard area of Jane Doe 3?
Yes, it does.
Showing you Court's Exhibit 89, does that show the user information for a ride dated May 10th, 2018?
Yes, it does.
And moving forward to Court's Exhibit 90, previously identified, does that show the GPS data for that ride that extends southbound on Manchester Avenue along the San Elijo Lagoon area?
Yes.
And is that where the reported sexual assault of Jane Doe 2 was reported to have occurred.
Yes.
Now, in terms of some of the further case support that you did you also conduct a cell phone download of the phone that was identified as, by Detective Johnson as being taken from the person of Kellen Winslow during his arrest on June 14th of 2018?
Yes, I did.
Can you just tell the jury, in terms of cell phone download technology, how it is that you've received training in that area and what you do when you, in fact, conduct a download?
In terms of training, I had on-the-job training up to through our subject matter expert in our unit. And then in 2017, I took 2 courses through outside agencies, including our RCFL laboratory and a company called GeoCell, amounting to 24 hours of training.
What type of software program and hardware do you actually use in order to conduct a cell phone download?
It's a program called Cellbrite, and we typically use for this particular phone model, we use just the standard issue iPhone cord.
And when you say it's an iPhone cord, is that the kind that you can plug in with a USB port to either charge or even plug in directly to a computer?
Correct.
And you mentioned the term Cellbrite. Is that the software program that's used by law enforcement to forensically download a cellular device?
Yes, it is.
Can you just describe the training that you received when you went to the outside agencies, separate from the on-the-job training you've done?
Those particular trainings both covered how to forensically download the actual device and then how to interpret the results that we received from the phones.
And did you, in fact, conduct a download of the device that Detective Johnson provided to you with the description of it being Mr. Winslow's?
Yes.
And do you recall when you conducted that extraction of the device?
The actual extraction itself, if I may just double check on the
Would it
report
refresh
here.
your recollection and refer
Yes.
to your notes?
The actual extraction occurred on June 20th, 2018, approximately 1600 hours, 4 p.m.
And can you explain to the jury, when you're doing a Cellbrite download of a phone, what type of information is generated when you do this type of extraction?
It varies from model to model and depending on what kind of software is actually on the phone. But we'll typically get all of the text messages, any browsing data from their internet app. Sometimes we'll get chat messages, meaning their Facebook Messenger, the iMessage application. Again, it just depends on the model of phone we're looking at, but a great majority of what's on the cell phone.
And in terms of the volume of information that you would receive from an extraction report, is it fair to say that it's often in the at least hundreds, if not thousands of pages in terms of the data that would be contained on one extraction report?
Yes.
And was that the case when you completed this extraction?
Yes, it was.
Now, I want to talk to you about some of the specific items that were contained on the phone, but when you conducted this extraction on June 20th, did you obtain an extraction report that reflected the information contained on the phone?
Yes. So Cellbrite itself will output a file, for lack of a better term, that we upload into what they call their physical analyzer, and will open all of the files that were extracted, essentially, so that they can be gone through by the end user.
Does that extraction report include identifying information about the phone?
Yes.
The type, the phone model,
Yes.
and the manufacturer?
Yes.
What type of phone was this?
This was an iPhone 7.
And the information, or at least the user that was associated with the cell phone, was it identified in some way?
Yes.
What was it?
If I may refresh my memory here,
Please do.
it's listed as Kellen's iPhone.
Now, showing you Courts Exhibit 136 for identification. Do you recognize that as being the summary and device information portion of the extraction report?
Yes, I do.
And does that contain the fact that this was a iPhone 7 with the name of Kellen's iPhone?
Yes, it does.
Moving forward to Courts Exhibit 137 for identification, does this show a series of searched items, some of which have been deleted that were contained on the phone?
Yes, it does.
Does that include a search for different things, an address, for example?
Yes.
And that would be the first item, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And then looking down at the bottom, the 15th item, does that have the name Kellen Winslow searched on Twitter?
Yes, it does.
And neither of those were deleted, is that right?
That's correct.
In terms of the items that were deleted, directing your attention to what's noted as number 14, was there an item that was searched in Safari?
Yes, there was.
Is Safari an internet application that is used by Apple devices?
Yes, it is.
And what was the item that was searched in number 14?
It says, how do men show their bulge?
In ter-
Objection, relevance.
Overruled. This item was deleted, you said?
Yes, it was.
Okay, next question.
Was there a searched item under that's labeled 13 in the Safari application?
Yes, there is.
And what was that?
Kellen Winslow cycling?
And was that deleted as well?
Yes, it was.
Referring to search item number 6, was there a Safari search, application search that was also deleted in that row?
Yes.
What was that?
Kellen Winslow Jr.?
And referring to search item number 7 on this extraction report, was there also another item that was deleted?
Yes, there was.
And what was that search in the Safari application?
Warrior tattoos.
In addition to the search items that may be contained on an extraction report, did you also obtain text messages between the user of the phone that's identified as Kellen's iPhone and other parties?
Yes, I did.
Showing you Courts Exhibit 139 for 138 for identification. Is this a series of text messages with an individual with a phone number beginning 858?
Yes, it is.
Can you see those okay?
I can approach, Your Honor.
Yeah, could you give her the actual hard copy of 138?
I will.
Thank you.
Is that easier for you to see?
Much better, thank you.
Okay.
Does that contain a series of text messages with that user with the prefix 858?
Yes, it does.
And is this an outgoing text message sent on June 7th, 2018 at 2:53 or 14:53 hours?
Yes, it is.
And in terms of the content of the text message, what was that first text message that was outgoing from the phone that you downloaded?
It says, Roman, what's up, bro? How have you been?
And was that sent on June 7th, 2018 and delivered to that phone number?
Yes.
What was the next text message sent by this phone, to the user of this phone, on June 7th at 2:53 p.m.?
It says, want to sell this Hummer?
Was there a response that was received a minute later?
Yes. It says, K2, how are bro?
And was there a additional text sent at 4:51 p.m. or 16:51
Yes.
on June 7th?
Yes, there was.
And was that a incoming text to the device that you downloaded?
Yes, it was.
Was there a name associated with the phone number that sent this text?
Yes,
Is it listed in parentheses?
it is.
And what's that name?
Roman?
Does that come from the contact list from the device that was downloaded?
Yes, that's correct.
And what was the content of that further text message now later in the day on June 7th?
It says, K2, can you text me some pics of your truck with the VIN number and mileage?
Was there a additional text sent at 5:35?
Yes.
What was that?
It says, I would like to buy it to tow some jet skis.
Were there further texts regarding potential purchase of the Hummer?
Yes.
What were the additional texts?
Continue, it says, you only thinking about a Raptor? And then continues, K2, how soon do you want to sell the Hummer?
Were each of those sent on June 7th, 2018?
Yes.
As far as you know, based upon your knowledge of the investigation, was that the same date that Mr. Winslow had been contacted by law enforcement and a reference sample of DNA was obtained, yes or no?
Yes.
Showing you Courts Exhibit 139 for identification on June 9th of 2018, was there a further text message from the contact Roman asking what's the miles?
Yes.
Was there a outgoing text message from Mr. Winslow that says new number?
Yes.
And were there attachments that were sent with photographs of a Hummer concurrently with that last text message?
Yes, there was.
And did the user Roman respond?
He did.
How did he respond?
He says, got it.
Did he respond further?
He says, you have the title, right? And there's additional.
Did he ask additional questions about
Yes.
the purchase?
Yes, he did.
What did he ask?
He says, what will you sell it for me? I'm sorry, what will you sell it to me for?
Did the user of Kellen's iPhone respond?
Yes.
How did he respond?
Says, yeah, got the title. Bought it for $40K 2 years ago with 80,000 miles on it. 30,000 with a question mark.
Showing you Courts Exhibit 140 for identification. Was there further conversation regarding the sale of this Hummer H2?
Yes.
And was there an incoming text message to the device that was downloaded, received from the contact Roman?
Yes.
What did it say?
It says, let me see now. Does the truck need anything?
And were arrangements made to actually see the Hummer?
Yes.
What was discussed in the following text messages?
The next text says, can I come see it Monday a.m.? I'll bring a check with me.
And did he discuss a price?
Yes.
What was that?
It says, I think it's worth 20 to 25K off the top of my head, but I'll come see it and we can agree on a number. Is that okay?
And was there an outgoing text message to the contact Roman sent from Kellen's iPhone?
Yes.
And what was that?
It says, yeah, Monday is good, bro.
Did each of these texts, were they all sent on June 9th of 2018?
Yes.
And did they essentially discuss the price further?
Yes, they did.
So showing you Courts Exhibit 141, going forward on June 9th of 2018, was there a further incoming text message from the contact Roman?
Yes, there was.
And what did that say?
It says, okay, cool. Are you available between 11 and 12?
And was there a further question mark?
Yes.
And was there an outgoing response?
Yes.
And what was the date and time of that outgoing response?
On June 9th at 5:32 p.m.
And what was the response?
It says, that's perfect, bro.
Was there a further outgoing text message that was sent after that from Kellen's iPhone?
Yes, there was.
What was that?
It says, let me look to see what I'm liking.
And what was the response from the contact Roman?
It says, perfect. Text me the address. I'll come see you Monday.
Showing you Courts Exhibit 142 for identification. Now on June 10th of 2018, was there a further text message that was received from the contact Roman?
Yes.
What was that?
It says, K2, see you tomorrow. Is Hummer title at your house? Only thinking Raptor for your next car, or you still like Range Rovers?
And was there a outgoing text message from Kellen's iPhone?
Yes, there was.
What was that?
It says, yeah, we have the title, and I was thinking something like a Suburban or Tahoe.
And as it extends forward, would that contain the additional back and forth discussion regarding the sale and the title and the purchase price?
Yes.
Showing you Courts Exhibit 143 for identification, does that contain text messages that were sent and received with the contact Roman regarding the purchase of this Hummer?
Yes.
Now, looking at the third from the bottom on June 10th of 2018, at 6:22 p.m., was there a text message that was sent from the Kellen's iPhone that stated, all right, thanks, see you tomorrow?
Are you
Yeah.
talking about Exhibit 143?
Yes.
I'm showing that as 22:11 p.m.
Part of it, I would refer to the date. So that would be 10/11, is that right?
Correct.
And is that where the user of Kellen's iPhone said, all right, thanks, see you tomorrow?
Yes.
And then extending further, did the contact Roman respond?
Yes.
What did he say?
It says, anytime, bro. See you tomorrow, K2.
So now looking at June 11th of 2018 at 9:22 a.m., was there a text message that was sent from the contact Roman?
Yes.
And what did it say?
It says, on my way to you now from Miramar.
Showing you Courts Exhibit 144 for identification. Were there further communications between the contact Roman and the user of Kellen's iPhone that talked about their meeting that day?
Yes.
What did the contact Roman send?
The first one says about 20 minutes away.
And what was the response from the user of Kellen's iPhone?
It says, Rom, I'm getting the car washed.
And did he ask regarding the time?
Yes, it continues to say, can you still do 11?
And what was the response from the contact Roman?
It says, I can meet you at the car wash, question mark. You really don't even need to wash at K2, I'm not worried about that.
And what was the response from the user of Kellen's iPhone on June 11th at 9:27 a.m.?
It says, oh, okay, no, I was gonna have a mobile service do it.
And what was the further response from the user of Kellen's iPhone?
It says, okay, come through.
And what was the next text message from the contact Roman?
No, don't worry, I'll see you shortly.
I'm showing you Courts Exhibit 145 for identification. The last one as it relates to this text conversation. At 6:11, on June 11th, 2018 at 9:39 a.m., did the contact Roman send a text message to Kellen's iPhone?
Yes,
What did it say?
here at the gate.
Going forward then, on the same day, June 11th at 10:33 a.m., was there an additional incoming text message?
Yes.
And what did it say?
It said, nice seeing you, K2, I'll send you Tahoe pics today.
And was there a response from the user of Kellen's iPhone?
Yes.
What did it say?
Good to see you too, bro, thanks.
Now, in addition to the text messages that were recovered during the extraction of this iPhone, did you also receive a series of photographs that had been taken by the user of that iPhone?
Yes.
Gunnar, if I could object, if I could, we could have a sidebar on the record.
Okay. We'll meet at sidebar on the record. Are these, are you starting at 146?
Yes, Your Honor.
And going through 153?
Yes.
Do you have those in a hard copy?
Yes.
Let's bring them in the back.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thanks. You can all talk amongst yourselves. We'll be right back.
And then sometimes there are people that be so small, we can try to get the right so they fail. And then try to get them so because it's such a small arm. Everyone's just asking to do
You all set?
Yes, thank you.
All right, we are now meeting in the presence of the jury. All jurors are here, all counsel, the defendant are present. All right, Mr. Owens, you can continue your direct examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. So then moving forward to Courts Exhibit 148 for identification. Now, we were just discussing the conversation regarding the negotiation and purchase of a Hummer H2, is that right?
Yes.
Looking at that exhibit before you on Courts Exhibit 148, does that show that there was a series of photographs that were taken of the black Hummer H2?
Yes.
What was the date that the first photograph was taken?
June 9th, 2018, approximately 3:23 in the afternoon.
And does this first exhibit show seven total photographs? I can't count correctly today. 6 total photographs.
Yes, it does.
Showing you further Courts Exhibit 149, does it show a series of photographs also taken on the same date?
Yes.
And were those various locations on the Hummer H2?
Yes.
Showing you Courts Exhibit 150 for identification, does that continue to show a series of photographs taken on June 9th?
Yes, it does.
And do they all depict various locations within the Hummer H2?
Yes, it does.
Showing you Courts Exhibit 151 for identification, does that likewise show different locations within the Hummer H2?
Yes.
And were those taken on the same date of June 9th?
Yes, they were.
And showing you Courts Exhibit 152, were those additional photographs taken of the interior portion of the Hummer H2?
Yes, they are.
And were they also taken on the same date of June 9th?
Yes, they were.
Now showing you Courts Exhibit 153 for identification, does that show the last of the series of photographs taken of the Hummer H2?
Yes.
And were they all taken on the same date?
Yes, they were.
Thank you, nothing further, Your Honor.
All right, Cross?
Thank you. Good afternoon, Ms. McKinney.
Hi.
Can you hear me from here?
I can.
Thank you. You just testified to a series of text messages between Kellen's iPhone and a person identified as Roman.
Yes.
Are you aware that Roman is a licensed car dealer?
I was not.
Did you do any investigation into who Roman is?
I do not recall specifically. I do know there was some discussion with one of the detectives in the unit, but I think he did most of it on his own.
So another detective did the investigation into who Roman is.
Correct.
Do you know who that detective is?
Detective Sean Snow?
Snow?
Yes.
So these conversations, this text series between Kellen's iPhone and Roman began on June 7th. Is that right?
Let me just go back to the exhibit here. Yes, that's correct.
And the two individuals are talking about the sale of the Hummer on June 7th, June 7th. is that
Correct.
right? June 8th,
I do not have text messages on June 8th for that.
June 9th,
Yes.
June 10th,
Yes.
and June 11th.
Yes, that's correct.
And was there anything in that series of text messages that indicated any urgency to sell the Hummer?
Not that I saw.
Nothing further.
All right, anything further, Mr. Owens?
No, thank you.
All right, can this witness be excused?
She may.
All right. Any objection?
No.
All right, you are excused. Thank you very much. I'll take those exhibits. You're not leaving with any, are you?
No.
Okay. All right, thank you very much. Have a nice day. Next witness?
Thank you, Your Honor. The people called Michael Palermo.
All right.
You do solemnly state that the testimony you are about to give in the matter now pending before this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
If you would, please have a seat at the witness stand. And if you would, please state your name and spell your first and last name for the record.
Mike Palermo, M-I-K-E, P-A-L-E-R-M-O.
Thank you.
All right, good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
All right, direct examination?
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Mr. Palermo.
Good afternoon.
What do you do for a living?
I am employed by the state of Arizona at Scottsdale Police Department Crime Laboratory. I'm a forensic scientist there in the DNA unit. I perform DNA analysis on bodily fluids and biological material, prepare reports on my findings, and testify in court as needed.
When is it that you started with the state of Arizona working with Scottsdale Police Department?
Back in November 2018.
Prior to relocating and beginning your work in Arizona, did you work in some capacity here in San Diego in the same area?
Yes, I worked as a criminalist for the San Diego Sheriff's Department Crime Laboratory for approximately 10.5 years, essentially performing the same functions that I described for Scottsdale.
Can you tell the jury just briefly about your educational experience that qualified you to become a forensic scientist?
I graduated from the University of California, San Diego with a biology degree in 2006. And from there, after my internship with the San Diego Police Department Crime Laboratory, I worked for Bodie Technology as a private DNA testing company. And then after that, Los Angeles Police Department, San Diego Sheriff's, and now Scottsdale.
How many total years did you spend working in the San Diego Sheriff's Department Crime Lab?
approximately 10 and a half.
And we've already heard from an analyst in this case, so I'm not going to cover a lot of the types of the subject matter that we may discuss normally. But in terms of your assignment and what you personally tested in this particular case, have you had an opportunity to review your reports and findings?
Yes, I did.
So regarding sheriff's case ending 974, was information provided to you regarding the sexual assault of a woman who we're referring to as Jane Doe number 2?
Your Honor, may I refer to my report?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, that is correct.
And in terms of the analysis that you conducted with regard to Jane Doe number 2, were you given a reference sample that was identified as being from a person by the name of Kellen Winslow?
Yes.
And how is that item referred to in your report writing? By what number?
That is item 2.2.
Was
I'm
that-
sorry, 2.1.
And in terms of item 2.1, was that a reference sample that had been impounded by Detective John Johnson of the same case number and who made the actual request for analysis from you?
I'm unsure on who impounded that, but that's through our property and evidence unit is where I obtained that item.
Okay. And in terms of obtaining that item, did you conduct DNA analysis of the reference sample associated with Mr. Winslow?
Yes.
And were you able to develop a profile?
Yes.
Can you explain to the jury the process by which you develop a profile from a reference sample?
Yes, so this sample, I believe this sample was a buccal swab or oral reference swab. And so it's just a large Q-tip, swab the inside of your mouth, your cheeks. And the first step in the DNA process is to break open those cells that house the DNA. So we add heat and chemicals to a cutting from that swab. And then we need to find out, that's the extraction step, then we need to find out how much DNA we have in the sample, so we quantitate it. After our quantitation step, we do PCR, or polymerase chain reaction. It's just a molecular xeroxing of the DNA, the types, the areas of the DNA that we're interested in. And then we'll use a genetic analyzer to help detect those DNA types. And I'll write a report on my findings.
And once you've generated a profile for the reference sample, is that then available for comparison to any items of evidence that may be analyzed by either you or any other criminalist within the crime lab?
Yes.
And are you aware that criminalist Kelly Hensley from the Sheriff's Department Crime Lab conducted a extensive amount of follow-up analysis?
Yes.
Now, did you in fact initially compare that profile to the sexual assault kit, or the SART kit, or rape kit, as some people refer to it, involving Jane Doe 2?
Yes, I did.
And the various items that had been collected from that SART kit, is that right?
Correct.
Now, did you likewise then conduct further analysis regarding swabs of potential DNA that were found within a Hummer H2?
Yes.
And were those swabs of DNA collected or impounded by Brandy Silverthorne from the San Diego Sheriff's Department in conjunction with Stephen Liu, criminalist from your crime lab?
Yes.
And in terms of the various items that were collected from the different locations within the Hummer H2, were those individually itemized under case number ending 974?
Yes, they were.
And were you able to compare those potential DNA swabs to the profile that you obtained from Mr. Winslow?
Yes.
And were you able to detect any DNA evidence that related to Mr. Winslow from those DNA swab kits?
They are third mind for report.
Yes, that will refresh your recollection. Go ahead and do so and look up when you finish.
What item would you like me to discuss my results on?
So we can go one by one. Was there in fact a DNA swab kit from the front passenger door panel?
Yes.
And were you able to obtain any DNA that matched Mr. Winslow?
Yes. That was an apparent single source DNA profile that appeared consistent with DNA from Winslow.
Did you exclude as possible contributors either Jane Doe 1 or Jane Doe 2?
Yes. Both Jane Doe 1 and Jane Doe 2 were excluded as possible contributors.
Did you then attempt to compare profiles that had been developed for Mr. Winslow, Jane Doe 1 and Jane Doe 2 to the swab kit from the front passenger seat belt?
I was not able to make a comparison to that item. Due to the possible number of DNA contributors, no conclusions or comparisons could be made on that profile.
That was based upon the interpretation of the DNA mixture that you found, is that right?
Yes.
Can you explain to the jury how a DNA mixture works and how it impacts your ability to draw any conclusions from it?
At the Sheriff's Crime Lab, anything over 4-person mixtures, they do not interpret. When you start dealing with mixtures of numerous individuals, the DNA results can get very complicated, and the Sheriff's Department currently doesn't have a method for that.
When you get to the point of having more than 4, is that right?
Correct.
Now, were there also DNA swab kits taken from the rear passenger side seat belt?
Correct.
In terms of Mr. Winslow and Jane Doe number 2, were those results inconclusive?
Yes.
And was Jane Doe 1 excluded from the rear passenger seat belt?
Yes.
Regarding the rear driver's side seat belt, was there a swab kit that was collected and submitted for analysis?
Yes, there was.
And was it inconclusive as it related to Mr. Winslow, Jane Doe 1, and Jane Doe 2?
Yes.
Was there a stain collection kit that had been taken from the rear middle seat area of the Hummer H2?
Yes.
How is a stain collection kit different from a DNA swab kit?
So this stain collection kit, I believe, was a swab. I don't have my case notes with me, but I believe it was a swab of a potential semen stain from the vehicle. And so that is just a similar process, a big Q-tip or a swab moistened with sterile water to swab up the portion of the stain.
Is it fair to say that when a vehicle is being forensically processed, they will, the criminalist and the forensic evidence technician will identify the areas of potential DNA as either a DNA swab kit or a stain collection kit, depending upon what's actually visibly seen?
Yes.
And is a stain collection kit something that would be suspected biological material?
Correct.
What process did you use in order to attempt to determine whether or not that stain collection kit actually contained semen? We're referring to item 9.1 from the rear middle seat.
Yes. So in this sample, a sperm search was done. When looking for a potential semen stain, we often start with a presumptive test, and that's just a simple color change test. So in the presence of chemicals, you'll get a color change reaction, which is a presumptive test. We'll then need to do a confirmatory test, and which involves searching for sperm cells. And in this sample, sperm cells were observed. So semen was detected on that stain, in that stain.
Once you had observed sperm cells within the stain kit that was collected from the rear middle seat portion of the Hummer, did you engage in the differential extraction process to analyze the potential DNA present?
Yes.
Can you just explain whether or not you were able to successfully isolate a sperm fraction from a non-sperm fraction?
Yes, I was.
Now, when you compared the, first the sperm fraction from the stain kit, did you compare that to the reference sample from Mr. Winslow?
I did.
What conclusions did you draw?
The DNA profile obtained from that item matched the DNA profile from Kellen Winslow.
And did you compare that non-sperm fraction to the DNA reference sample from Mr. Winslow as well?
Yes, I did.
And what conclusions did you draw?
That was an apparent single source DNA profile, and it appears to be consistent with the DNA profile from Kellen Winslow.
Now, turning to item 9.2, was that a stain collection kit from the rear floorboard area of the Hummer H2?
Yes, it was.
Did you also follow the same process to determine whether or not there was semen present?
Yes.
And were you able to identify intact sperm cells?
Yes.
Did you engage in the differential extraction process?
Yes.
And what conclusions did you draw from the comparison of the sperm fraction to the reference sample of Mr. Winslow?
The DNA profile obtained from that item matched Mr. Winslow.
Did you also compare that to the non-sperm fraction from the stain collection kit on the rear floorboard?
Yes.
And what conclusions did you draw?
The DNA profile obtained from that item matched the DNA profile obtained from Kellen Winslow as well.
Is it fair to say that based upon your analysis of the swabs that were collected during the initial processing of the vehicle excluded either Jane Doe 1 or Jane Doe 2 from being present? Or were rendered inconclusive?
Jane Doe 1 was excluded as a possible contributor.
And were there some various areas of inconclusive results as it related to Jane Doe 2?
As far as the item 9.1, the stain collection kit from the rear middle seat, Jane Doe 2 was excluded. Jane Doe 2 was excluded from the non-sperm fraction of the stain from the rear middle seat. The sperm fraction stain from the rear floorboard, Jane Doe 2 was also excluded. And the non-sperm fraction from that area, the rear floorboard, Jane Doe number 2 was excluded.
And we've discussed the areas or the items where there were inconclusive results, correct?
Correct.
Nothing further at this time, Your Honor.
All right, we're going to go ahead and take our afternoon recess. We're going to be recessed for 20 minutes. I'll ask counsel to stick around. I have another issue to talk to them about briefly, so we'll see you back here in 20 minutes. Please remember the admonition, 20 minutes. Jurors have left the courtroom. I just wanted to, I know we've talked about it informally off the record about scheduling for tomorrow. Before lunch, we just met briefly in chambers off the record and discussed the possibility of having Jane Doe number 1's daughter come in tomorrow morning for a hearing to determine what exactly she's going to say. As I told you after lunch, I rethought that because there's no preliminary fact that needs to be established before she testifies. There's no reason to have a 402 hearing. My understanding is, Mr. Owens, you want to bring her in to establish that she saw the bloody pants and also to establish that the complaint was made the day after the alleged rape, correct?
Yes.
All right, now would come in under a fresh complaint. It's a non-statutory exception. It's not admitted for the truth, but just merely the fact that it was made, identifying the perpetrator, and just the nature of the attack. So that would be allowed. Now the next question would be whether or not anything Jane Doe told her daughter comes in as an exception to the hearsay rule, either as a prior consistent statement or a prior inconsistent statement, and we can handle that as we go along. We don't need to air the whole thing out beforehand. I will note that there's been much made by the defense that this is a recently fabricated allegation, that because she found out he was a football player and had some money, that she's has an improper motive. I think the people established through the DA investigator that testified at the end of the day, Ms. Pierce, that she first saw the name on a subpoena on, I think, June 24th or thereabouts. And this statement would precede that, so it would come in under a prior consistent statement. And if she said something different to her daughter than she testified to here in court or to one of the other detectives, it would come in under a prior inconsistent statement. So I don't see any need to have her come in for a hearing beforehand because there's no preliminary fact that needs to be established. So Mr. Owens, what's your position? And I'm only doing this now because I want to know if we need to have the jury come back at 9 or 10. I think we just have them come back at 9 in the morning. So Mr. Owens?
I agree with the court's analysis, and I'm asking that we allow the testimony to take place in front of the jury. If there is a matter in dispute as a preliminary fact, then of course we can do a 402 hearing, but I don't think that there really is. She has made her statement last week. We have provided that to defense counsel. Defense counsel has had an opportunity to meet with her and interview her. They've indicated that they did so. And at this point, I think that she provides relevant evidence that would either be non-hearsay or would meet a hearsay exception.
All right, and have you had a chance to meet with her, Mr. Carlos?
You know, I have not met with her. My investigator has made efforts to speak to her. I have not spoken to my investigator today because I've been in here, but I just want to make a record here. I think this is a unique situation. We have a witness who essentially, I'm speaking because I did the cross-examination of Jane Doe 1, and from what I'm aware of from the recording that I heard, this witness watched the entire cross-examination of this witness on court TV or whatever it was streaming. I think she said court TV. And if that's the case, you know, she watched the entirety of her testimony, the entirety of the cross-examination as well as the direct. In addition to that, no doubt probably heard the talking heads who may have said things about what was happening with her mother, how her credibility had been shot as a result of cross-examination. So I think that presents a situation where you have a very, very biased witness who is armed with information which she wouldn't have had. In other words, if we pulled this witness, you know, off the street to testify on this, she wouldn't have known anything because she wouldn't have talked to her mother, and she wouldn't have known what the cross-examination was. And I think that's very problematic in a case like this. You know, Mr. Winslow has these charges where there are just 5 different victims who are all pointing fingers at him. It's a very difficult case, and that you allow this witness basically to come in and, I guess, you know, rehabilitate her mother, who was, once again, discredited on cross-examination, I think is unfair to Mr. Winslow. In addition to that, you know, some of the things that she's testifying about a bloody pair of pants, our cross-examination was, you know, we wanted to point out the fact that there were bloody pants. I mean, it's her own testimony. They're trying to impeach their own witness's testimony. That's prosecution is. We're not contesting that there were bloody pants.
Wait a minute, are you impeaching Jane Doe number 1 through her daughter?
No, Your Honor. We have a witness who's going to say that she saw blood on the pants that were worn the day before.
Right.
And there has been much made by the defense in terms of whether or not any blood was detected in the vehicle, where the blood was detected, if it had pooled, if it had, you know, been spotting, in the menstruation versus it caused by the act. There's been extensive cross-examination in this area, and we have a witness who is a direct recipient witness the day afterwards who's going to say that there was blood within the pants, and that then is corroborative of what the analysts have testified to, which is that there was reddish-brown staining on the pants at the time that it was analyzed in June of 2018.
All right, Mr. Carlos?
If the court recalls, you know, my cross-examination had this witness walking down, you know, the coast highway in a white pair of pants with blood all over it. I mean, I'll eat those facts all day long. I mean, I'm not impeaching her with anything. She says that she had blood all over her pants, her white pants. I'm good with that. But I don't think they should be allowed to rehabilitate their witness or impeach them because, you know, she's saying that she made it appear as if it was no big thing. to walk around with blood on her pants. And, you know, I think it's unfair to allow this particular witness to be, once again, impeached by the prosecution and then rehabilitated in the same witness.
Okay, well, I don't see it that way. I see that they are corroborating Jane Doe number one's testimony and supporting her credibility by evidence that the pants were there, they were bloody and so forth. And so the court does not see the need to have a 402 hearing. Is it your position that she should be barred from testimony because she saw her mother's direct examination on TV?
Yes.
Okay, do you have a case that supports that?
That's why I say this is pretty unique. I don't think we have, it's very rare you have gavel-to-gavel coverage of a trial and somebody watching it and then watching lawyers chime in. I mean, no offense to court TV, but some of the lawyers they have commentating on this thing aren't really in this trial. They're commenting about evidence which is not admissible. They're commenting about, you know, some of them may have read like one paragraph. They're not in this trial. They have no idea what's going on, but they want to say something to sound good. So that's what this witness is listening to, and it's just unfair. I don't know what she watched. I don't know who said what.
Okay, well, imagine your investigator asked her about what she watched and what she saw, and I don't know of any case or any statutory authority that would say that this witness is completely barred from testifying. So she will be able to testify. And Mr. Carlos, you can cross-examine her as much as you want as to what she saw, what talking heads she listened to, and what she heard her mother say while she was watching TV. I am not restricting you in any way in that cross-examination. I just don't see any authority for barring her.
I understand the court's ruling, but the record's clear. I don't see it any different from somebody sitting in the audience, right, and watching testimony and then saying, oh, by the way, I didn't tell you this. It's the same thing because they're watching it at home. Right.
Well, there was a motion to exclude witnesses. She was not a witness, and based on discussions we had in chambers, apparently she was unaware that her mother was going to be testifying.
But she was not a witness because she was not truthful with the prosecution. She told them that she hadn't talked to anybody, and apparently she had. And that allowed them not to name that person as a witness.
Okay, well, I don't see any misconduct. I think this is a witness who came forward.
This is not on the district attorney's office. I'm talking about the witness. In other words, that they relied on their witness who said that she hadn't spoken to anybody, and then all of a sudden this other witness comes out and says, hey, she spoke to me.
All right.
And because of that, they didn't name her as a witness, and I think it's unfair.
You will have great broad discretion to cross-examine this witness who just came forward, but I don't see any way to bar her testimony. So to get to the point, then we will have the jury come back tomorrow at 9. We're not going to have a 402 hearing on this issue.
All right, thank you, Your Honor. And based on scheduling for the rest of the afternoon, the people would be presenting after cross-examination of Mr. Palermo, Kelly Hensley, to talk about some of the further analysis that she did. If we begin with Jane Doe 4, that would take most of the morning tomorrow. If we have a natural breaking point after Ms. Hensley, it may make more sense to call Ms. Foster first thing tomorrow morning and just break a little bit early rather than starting with Jane Doe 4 and then reverting back to the testimony of Jane Doe 1's daughter.
Okay. Is Jane Doe 4 here and ready to go today?
If we need to.
All right. Well, is that your preference then, to get her on the stand today? And
I'd actually prefer to allow Jane Doe 1's daughter to testify first before beginning with Jane Doe 4 and a whole slew of other witnesses regarding those facts. But I don't know what the timing is going to be with Cross on the
okay. Is Jane Doe 1's daughter here today?
She is not.
Okay, so it would be your preference to start with her in the morning and then go into Jane Doe number 4?
Yes.
Okay, and will that take us through till pretty late today then?
I think that with the DNA analyst, we'll probably get close to 4 o'clock.
Okay.
I don't have any objection I think we should keep Jane Doe 4 on one day.
Okay, yeah, I agree. I don't want her to hit the stand today and then bring her back in the morning. So we'll do that. We'll finish up with your evidence today, and we'll have Jane Doe number 4, well, actually Jane Doe number 1's daughter first, and then Jane Doe number 4 tomorrow, right? Okay, so I've eaten up 15 out of the 20 minutes of the recess, so Manny can let the jurors know that we'll resume 15 minutes from now, so it'll be at 3:10. All right, we'll be in recess till that time.
Thank you.
Thank you.